What if the next global market crash has nothing to do with inflation, a housing bubble, or some new war? What if the real trigger is something almost nobody is talking about? A secret hiding in plain sight. The world's financial elite get it. They understand this simple, hidden time bomb. It's a paradox that makes no sense on the surface. A global shortage of US dollars that's happening right now, even as the government prints trillions. For years, the story was simple. A strong dollar would squeeze the world into a recession. But in 2025, something weird started happening. The dollar began to weaken, not strengthen. And this, as counterintuitive as it sounds, is the final warning. I'm going to show you exactly how this hidden shortage works, why a weakening dollar is the ultimate red flag, and why it makes the coming crash all but inevitable. To get what's happening, you have to understand one fundamental truth. The global economy is an addict, and its drug of choice is the US dollar. This isn't my opinion, it's baked into the system. Since World War II, the dollar has been the world's reserve currency. Think of it as the operating system for global trade. When Japan buys oil from Saudi Arabia, they don't use yen or reals, they use dollars. When a company in Brazil wants to build a factory, it often borrows in US dollars because that's what global investors trust. The vast majority of global trade is done in dollars. Central banks from Beijing to Berlin hold most of their emergency savings in US dollars, mainly through Treasury bonds. For decades, this system worked more or less. America bought more from the world than it sold, running a trade deficit. In doing so, it exported the dollars everyone else needed to do business. It was a cycle. The world needed dollars, and America printed and spent them. This created a massive offshore market for dollars, a multi-trillion-dollar parallel financial universe that powers the globe. But this addiction has a dark side. It makes the entire world incredibly vulnerable to the supply of a currency only one country can print. Every nation and corporation operating internationally needs a constant flow of dollars just to survive. This creates a permanent demand for dollars. So, what happens when the supply of those dollars is suddenly threatened? For years, everyone thought a strong dollar would be the killer, making it too expensive for nations to pay back their dollar debts. But that's not what's happening. The Federal Reserve has paused its rate hikes, and in 2025, the dollar has been getting weaker, and this is where the real danger is. The problem isn't a simple shortage from a strong dollar anymore, it's a far more insidious crisis, a shortage of confidence in the dollar itself. And you can't solve that by just printing more money. So, how can there be a dollar shortage when the US government is printing trillions and the dollar is getting weaker? It sounds like a total contradiction. But here's the secret: the dollar's value isn't just about printing presses, it's about trust and the plumbing that moves it around the world. Imagine the global financial system as a giant plumbing network. The US is the main water tower, supplying dollar liquidity to everyone. For this to work, two things have to be true. First, the world has to trust that the water is clean. Second, the pipes have to be clear. For years, the main pipe was the US trade deficit. America bought stuff and dollars flowed out. Another pipe was the US banking system, lending dollars to the world. This entire setup was based on one crucial belief: that the safest financial asset on earth was a US Treasury bond. But what happens when that trust starts to rust? That's the critical shift we're seeing in 2025. First, look at the source. The endless money printing and skyrocketing government debt are making global investors nervous. They're starting to ask if the US can really pay back its debts without just inflating the currency into dust. The dollar's weakness in 2025, even after the Fed's aggressive hikes, is a huge signal that the market is starting to price in this risk. The water in the tower is starting to look murky. Second, and this is the most important part, other countries are starting to build their own plumbing. This is de-dollarization. They are actively trying to get off the system. You see it most openly with the BRICS nations: Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. They aren't just talking, they're building the infrastructure for payment systems that bypass the dollar. While it's not a full scale replacement yet, the message is clear. They want to break their dependency on a system they no longer trust. This creates the paradox: a dollar shortage in a sea of dollars. It's not that the dollars themselves are disappearing. It's that the willingness to hold and trade them is vanishing. The pipes are getting clogged with suspicion. When a major nation like China decides to trade in its own currency, the global need for dollars to handle that trade simply drops. When central banks quietly sell US treasuries and buy gold instead, the system's foundation starts to crack. The world is running out of willing dollar holders. This creates a shortage of confidence, which is infinitely more dangerous. The world is waking up from its addiction, and the withdrawal is about to get violent. If the dollar system is a dam holding back financial chaos, we're now seeing cracks spreading everywhere. These aren't theories, these are measurable shifts happening right now. The most obvious crack is the dollar's shrinking role. The share of US dollars in global reserves has been falling for years. It was over 70% around the year 2000, but by 2024, it had dropped to under 60%. In the slow moving world of central banking, that's a tectonic shift. It's a clear vote of no confidence. And where's that money going? A lot of it is going into gold. Central banks, especially in the BRICS bloc, are hoarding gold at a record pace. Why? Because gold is nobody else's liability. It can't be printed, devalued, or seized by sanctions. It's financial freedom. They are openly diversifying because they see the writing on the wall. Look at China. For years, China recycled its trade surpluses into US Treasury bonds, propping up the whole system. That's over. China has been consistently cutting its holdings of US government debt for years now. This is a monumental shift. China is systematically unplugging its financial future from the United States. At the same time, the idea of the dollar as a safe haven is falling apart. A safe haven is supposed to get stronger in uncertain times. Yet in 2025, despite all the geopolitical turmoil, the dollar has been weakening. That's a huge red flag. It suggests capital isn't rushing into the dollar for safety anymore. It's looking for the exits. This leads us to the scariest part. As everyone starts moving away from the dollar, where do they go? What's the alternative? This is the core of the crisis. There is no real alternative. The euro? The EU has its own massive debt problems. The Japanese yen? Japan's economy has been stagnant for decades. The Chinese yuan? As much as China wants its currency to go global, its markets aren't deep or transparent enough to handle trillions fleeing the dollar. No other market on earth can absorb that kind of shock. This is the trap. The world is losing faith in the dollar, but there's nowhere else to run. So you have everyone nervously inching toward the exit, knowing that if one person sprints, the stampede will crush them all. The dam is about to break. If you're getting value from this, do me a favor and hit the subscribe button. We cover the topics the mainstream media is too afraid to touch, and you won't want to miss what's coming. This is where all the pieces click together. The next global crash won't be a 2008 repeat. The trigger will be the catastrophic failure of the dollar system itself. A failure born not from its strength, but from a complete loss of faith. Here's how it will likely play out. The process has already started with slow de-dollarization, but this creates a dangerous feedback loop. As more players leave the dollar system, it becomes less useful for those who remain. The trust in US Treasuries continues to erode. Then a catalyst will strike. It could be anything. A major geopolitical event, a disastrous US debt auction where there just aren't enough buyers, or a large country announcing a strategic shift out of all dollar assets. This catalyst will turn the slow leak into a flood. Seeing the writing on the wall, other large holders of US debt, pension funds, foreign governments, corporations, will all rush for the exit at once. They won't want to, but they'll have to. It's a race to the bottom. The first to sell loses the least. This isn't a stock market sell-off. This is a sell-off in the bedrock of the entire global financial system. As trillions in US Treasuries are dumped on the market, their price will plummet and their yield, the interest rate the US government pays, will skyrocket. That spike in yields is the kill shot. First, it bankrupts the US government. The cost of servicing its mountain of debt becomes instantly impossible. Second, it causes every other asset price on earth to violently crash. The interest rate on US Treasuries is the risk-free rate used to value everything else. Stocks, real estate, you name it. As that rate explodes, the value of everything else collapses. This will trigger a global cascade of margin calls. The system will be flooded with US dollars and bonds that nobody wants. This is the real dollar shortage. Not a shortage of currency, but a sudden, violent shortage of buyers for US dollar debt. It's a complete evaporation of trust. And that's when the markets will crash, harder and faster than anything we've ever seen. So, what does this mean for you? How do you protect yourself from something so massive? This isn't financial advice, but it is about understanding how to preserve wealth when the rules are changing. The first step is knowledge. By understanding what we've talked about today, you're already ahead of 99% of people who will be completely blindsided. You now know that the very definition of a safe asset is up for debate. Logically, this points toward diversifying, not just into different stocks, but across different systems. Throughout history, during times of monetary chaos, wealth has been saved in assets that exist outside the traditional financial system, tangible things that can't be printed into oblivion. Think about assets that have held value for thousands of years through the rise and fall of countless empires. Think about assets that are decentralized and can't be controlled by a single government. The key is to have a portion of your wealth in things that aren't just someone else's promise to pay you back. Ultimately, the best protection is being prepared. When the system itself is the source of risk, blindly trusting it is no longer a winning strategy. The ground is shifting under our feet. We are living through the end of a financial era. The 75-year-old system built on the US dollar is fracturing right before our eyes. The story has flipped. It's no longer about a strong dollar causing problems. It's about a world losing faith in a weakening dollar, which is far more dangerous. De-dollarization isn't a conspiracy theory. It's a measurable trend confirmed by data from the world's top financial institutions. The move by nations like China and the BRICS to hoard gold and build new systems isn't a coincidence. It's a calculated strategy to break free. And the paradox of a dollar shortage is no longer a paradox when you see it for what it is, a crisis of confidence. The world is running out of trust. And when trust is gone, the system collapses. The trigger will be a stampede out of US Treasury bonds, an event that will detonate the entire global financial system. The crash is coming not from an outside shock, but from a sickness within the very core of the system. The dollar's reign is ending, and this transition won't be quiet. What are your thoughts? Do you see other cracks in the system? Let me know in the comments below. Let's build a community that's prepared. And make sure you're subscribed because this story is just getting started.